leather, chrome, skulls and flames, old men, bad men, hipsters. One company has stood the test of time and is still around to this day. Today, we're going to be talking about Harley Davidson. Welcome back to the Average Guy Explains YouTube channel, your one-stop place for all the knowledge in the world that you did not need, taught to you by a man who is definitely not qualified to teach you. Harley Davidson. It's a name as American as baseball, Coca-Cola, apple pie. But what is a Harley Davidson? Unless you're a connoisseur of motorcycles, you probably have an idea in your mind of what a Harley Davidson is, as the name brings up imagery of biker gangs and old men and big loud exhaust systems and these giant chrome motorcycles just barreling down the highway. But there's more to Harley Davidson than just meets the eye. So grab a drink, sit back, and maybe I'll teach you something about them. Harley Davidson was founded in 1903 by William Harley and Arthur Davidson in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The two childhood best friends had begun building gasoline-powered engines and mounting them to bicycle frames, creating gasoline-powered bicycles, or the first Harley Davidson motorcycles. Now, the reason I say that is because these models still featured pedals like a bicycle, as the engines did not have enough power to fully drive themselves in all scenarios. If you were going up a hill, you would still have to pedal to help get the vehicle up a hill, just because the internal combustion engine had not been fully developed into the modern day gasoline engines as we know them. This was still pretty early on in the life cycle in the history of the internal combustion engine, and William Harley and Arthur Davidson sought to create something better. They wanted to make not just gasoline-powered bicycles, they wanted to make motorcycles. By 1904, the two had developed a more powerful gasoline engine and decided to throw the pedals away and just make full-blown motorcycles. No more human assist, just gasoline-powered vehicles. They built their first factory in 1906 and began producing production model Harley Davidson motorcycles. By 1907, they caught the eye of a very important customer that would help them proceed into the future financially: the police. Fun fact, you see, the first police vehicles commonly used were motorcycles, as the automobile and car as we know it was still in its infancy, and there was not really well-made, mass-produced automobiles yet. Most vehicles were handmade by a small select few manufacturers, and they were almost exclusively for the wealthy. But motorcycles were, there's less vehicles, so it's cheaper to make, and the common man could afford a motorcycle. So the police, seeing as cities expanding and growing, they needed a vehicle that could allow them to respond to places faster than just walking or riding a horse. So they started buying motorcycles. In 1907, they produced something that the company would be famous for, and is something that they're still producing to this day: the V-twin engine. Fun fact, the reason that it is called a V-twin engine is because it's a dual-cylinder engine in the shape of a V. Harley continued to produce motorcycles and innovate as they competed with their main competitor, Indian Motorcycles. In 1917, there was a big disagreement going on in Europe, and America decided they wanted to get in on the argument as well. And so they rode into that argument with 20,000 Harley Davidson motorcycles. This set the stage for Harley, as securing that big of a government contract obviously helped them out financially. Then, at the conclusion of the Great European Disagreement, Harley was the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer. Going into the 1930s, the Great Depression was in full sweep across the nation, and every single American motorcycle company, except for two, went out of business. Those two being Harley Davidson and Indian Motorcycles. You see, Harley still had government contracts, so they were still producing police motorcycles as well as motorcycles for the military, but even this wasn't enough to save Harley Davidson fully. They still needed to make some smart business decisions to keep their head above water while the American economy attempted to repair itself. So Harley started producing three-wheel delivery vehicles and started selling them to large businesses and the United States Post Office. These vehicles were cheaper than traditional automobiles, and with an economy in shambles, large companies were looking for ways to still deliver their product, but not trying to sink a whole lot of money into actual full-scale delivery vehicles. Throughout the Great Depression, Harley managed to keep their head above water just long enough for another great world event to take place that would allow Harley to fully rebuild itself and retake the throne as the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer. The Great European Disagreement Part 2, German Boogaloo. With Part 2 of the Great European Disagreement in full effect, America once again decided, hey, let's get in on the action. We like to party. And so what did America do? They rode into the party once more with 120,000 Harley Davidson motorcycles. Harley produced bikes for all of the Allied nations. And at the conclusion of the Great European Disagreement, Harley was back on top again. The American economy had recovered, and Harley had once again taken the throne as the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer. At the conclusion of World War II, many veterans returned home and began buying these surplus Harley Davidsons that they had used during the war. These bikes were cheap, and it was something for them to do to take their mind off of the great disagreement that they had just partaken in. Many veterans began forming riding clubs, and this is where some of your early motorcycle clubs come from, such as the Hells Angels and other clubs like that, but that's a story for a different time. These veterans began to modify these vehicles or chop them, and this is where the term chopper comes from. It's because they were chopping parts off of the motorcycle to lighten them up and make them faster, make them unique, make them their own. This is really where Harley culture starts to take off, and the whole bad boy biker image starts to really take full swing, and Harley Davidson was more than welcome to embrace it. Fun fact, Harley was huge in motorcycle racing, and one of the factory Harley Davidson racing teams had a pig as the mascot. This is where the term hog comes from, and it is still an acronym that is used to this day by Harley Davidson to describe their motorcycles as their bikers are riding around on their hogs, as well as HOG being the stock ticker for Harley Davidson, and HOG being the Harley Owners Group, which is one of the largest riding groups in the entire world, and it is factory supported by Harley Davidson. Going into the 1950s and 1960s, Harley Davidson continued to expand. New models, new versions of their engines, new ventures, and everything was looking good. But like most large companies, Harley made some financial decisions, and they were kind of hurting for cash. So in 1969, the company was sold to American Machine and Foundry, or AMF. AMF was a large super conglomerate company that had their hands in all kinds of different avenues. They produced machinery, sporting equipment, atomic reactors, and bowling equipment. With AMF in control of the company, they brought massive industry and capabilities to the brand. They began mass producing Harley Davidson, but one important thing that AMF did was they began to really sink their hands into merchandising. AMF put Harley's name on everything from coffee cups to shot glasses to t-shirts, belt buckles, anything that they could put Harley Davidson's name and logo on, they did. And to this day, merchandise is a huge profit margin for Harley Davidson as a business, as if you walk into any Harley Davidson dealership, you'll see motorcycles, but you will also see a massive selection of Harley Davidson memorabilia and clothing and apparel. But like all super large companies, the need for profit went up and the quality went down. AMF produced Harley Davidsons were some of the worst motorcycles that have ever been produced under the Harley Davidson brand. This is where a lot of the negative stigma around Harley Davidson came from, and unfortunately it's stuck around to this day. This is where the reputation for mechanical problems, oil leaks, the bikes rattling themselves apart and pieces falling off the motorcycle while you're riding them. This was all under the AMF umbrella, Harley Davidson era. And the image of the brand had been tarnished. And unfortunately, Harley Davidson was on life support at the time, and AMF really couldn't see any way to get out from under it. With Harley Davidson suffering under the AMF ownership, AMF was looking to sell, and then in 1983, a group of investors, to include one Willie G. Davidson, grandson of William Davidson, a co-founder of Harley, decided to step in and purchase the company back. Under Willie Davidson's ownership, the brand rebuilt itself. They fixed inventory issues and quality control issues, as well as bringing out new engine designs to replace the failing ones that were under AMF. And once again, the motorcycles were reliable and rock solid again. Except now they had a new issue to face, and that was foreign imported motorcycles. Brands like Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki, and Kawasaki had been flooding the market with Japanese motorcycles, and those bikes were being produced cheaper than Harley Davidson's could be produced. And Harley, coming back off of the heels of the horrific AMF era of Harley Davidson, they decided they wanted some help from old Uncle Sam. So they petitioned the government, and President Ronald Reagan granted Harley Davidson protection. They imposed a 45% tariff on all imported motorcycles, meaning that Japanese motorcycles that came into the country cost more than a Harley Davidson did. So consumers wanting to buy the cheaper motorcycle started buying Harley Davidsons again. And just like that, Harley was back on top. From then to now, Harley continues to produce motorcycles, and while certain models and engines have changed, the core of the motorcycle is still exactly the same as it always has been. Harley continues to produce motorcycles that are aesthetically styled like the core American cruiser that they originally invented. The bikes are still powered by air-cooled V-twin engines, and they still aesthetically look like the old school Harley Davidson motorcycles. Today, Harley is still in business and is one of America's oldest running companies. They've been in business for well over 120 years, and they're still producing motorcycles as we speak. But Harley faces a new challenge: innovation and a new customer base. You see, Harley continues to build motorcycles the way that they've always made them. The problem being is that in a financially conscious world, these bikes are very expensive. The cheapest Harley Davidsons that you can buy today range from around $14,000 to $15,000, with certain models of Harley Davidson going upwards for $50,000 to $60,000. Harley just can't sell enough motorcycles. The modern consumer is very financially conscious, and with modern economics being the way that they are, a lot of people are looking for cheap transportation, and they're just not really sold on buying a $20,000 motorcycle when you can go to the likes of Honda and buy a motorcycle for significantly less money. You take that into consideration with the stigma of Harley Davidson that stuck around from the AMF era of them being unreliable machines and oil leaking and them breaking down, and a newer, younger customer base is something that Harley has struggled to maintain. Harleys are an old man's bike. When people think of Harley Davidson, that image comes to mind: that biker gang, that old guy with the leather vest and the handlebar mustache, the real biker. And in a day and age where, men are wearing skinny jeans and drinking microbrewed coffee, that image isn't cool anymore. Everybody loves Terminator 2, but leather jackets aren't really in fashion anymore. So this is a problem that Harley Davidson is going to have to try to find a way to figure out. They can't move their bikes to off-seas manufacturing because they have poised themselves as the American brand. Freedom, Eagles, it's all in their imagery. So if they start producing bikes overseas, it's going to upset their existing customer base. But the problem being is that if they don't find a way to change, they're not going to attract new customers, and their existing customer base is slowly dying off. The best-selling model Harley Davidson right now is a trike, because most of their customers can't stand up a two-wheel motorcycle anymore. So this is something that is up in the air. We're going to have to see what Harley decides to do and how they're going to try to way to tackle this. Are they going to create new, exciting looking motorcycles to upset their current customer base? Are they going to try to re-image themselves and rebrand as a new, exciting brand and get away from all of the skulls and the eagles and the chrome and the bad boy biker image? Are they going to risk alienating their current customer base that is still buying their motorcycles with the hope and prayer that they could attract a new customer base? Or is Harley just going to continue to sell the same motorcycles that they've been selling and just see how long they can ride the wave until eventually they fall into economic ruin and, go out doing the thing that they've always been doing? I don't know. The future of Harley Davidson is uncertain, but what is certain is that as of the recording of this video, Harley Davidson is still in business. They are still producing motorcycles, and if you have any interest in riding an American motorcycle, Harley Davidson would love to sell you one. But I believe this wraps up the Harley Davidson portion of this video. Hopefully you learned something. Hope maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't really know. I still don't even know if anybody's even watching these videos. But, if you did learn something, give me a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Harley Davidson motorcycles. Or let me know what you think about this very nice Wrangler shirt that I'm wearing. So I appreciate your time, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.